Today we're going to interview one of our favorite furniture designers, Stephen Kenn. All right, so I'm with Stephen Kenn of Stephen Kenn Studios.
Yes.
And we're sitting on the sofa. And I actually knew this sofa before I associated it with the name. I always called it like the Army surplus sofa because I think I had it pinned on Pinterest for probably like a year or two before I figured out sort of who there was a name associated with it. And I'd always show it to my sister, be like, because it's so different than everything else out there. Is this the sort of piece that you're most known for, or?
Yeah, I would probably say that. I started the company about 6 years ago with my wife, and I was at a bit of a turning point in my life. And the way I approach design in any capacity is take something apart. So when I first got into making jeans years ago, I started tearing jeans apart, and then I got into making bags and the same sort of thing. And when I thought about making furniture, the first step was rip it apart and learn how it's made. And so in the process of doing that, I took the sofa apart, and the wood frame and the springs and the foam and everything that was on the inside was more interesting to me than was kind of being concealed on the outside. And so I thought, how do we kind of start from the ground up, and grabbed a friend who was a welder, and we welded up the steel frame.
Really?
And I sewed these belts, ran the belts through the frame, tightened them up to kind of mimic that webbing that's stapled to the wood. So that was just tensioned with the notches on the belt.
So did you study like industrial design or furniture design, or?
I didn't, no.
Really?
So my background is more, I guess, DIY, if you want to say that, of just kind of getting into it and just taking things apart to learn how they're made and then starting to like try to do it yourself.
Did you know how to sew before?
So I taught myself how to sew when I was around 19. And then my friend and I started a jean company up in Canada. And then moved down to Los Angeles pretty quickly after that.
It's funny. I find that like I'm oddly like not surprised that there isn't like a formal design training background, because I feel like people that sort of break genres with like pieces is more because they don't have preconceived notions about like what a sofa is.
Yeah.
The thing that's always struck me about your thing so much is that it can seem sort of like very tactile and industrial, but still feel very light visually, right? Because the frame is like welded steel and you kind of see through it. It feels light, like the cushions are floating off, even though the overall, it's kind of boxy in terms of its overall geometry, and then it has the really cool hardware. I've always been a big fan of Army surplus stores, because I always think it's like you walk in and you see these packs, and they're incredibly tactical, and there's a million little buckles, little pouches. I'm always trying to figure out like, do grenades go in? They seem almost mysterious in their sort of functionality, and that's like always been the association with your sort of work, with all the buckles and straps and things like that.
Yeah, I was majorly inspired by military, and while I was doing the jean company, I was looking for a laundry, and I pulled into a parking lot just to do a U-turn because I was kind of lost, and I saw all this military fabric spilling off of a warehouse, like out the door. And so I came a little closer, jumped up on the loading dock, and stuck my head in, and this guy to the left said, "Hello, can I help you?" And he startled me, and he ended up being this really interesting guy named Coco, and we chatted for about 10-15 minutes, and he said, "What are you waiting for? Go look around." And I started going through this warehouse that was like the size of Costco, and it was full floor to ceiling with military. And it was mind-blowing. Like, it was the first time I've ever felt my jaw drop, because I was like, I've never been in a space like this that held this much history in a very like tangible way where I could just reach up and grab it. And I just came down with arms full of this stuff and said, "I don't know what the cost is, but," and he just said, "Your first customer is $1." And I just kept coming back.
And it was canvas that you bought.
Yeah, but there was canvas and stretchers and old bicycles and old motorcycles and boots and backpacks, and like I just became obsessed, and I would go in there and like, not even, because I knew that I didn't have the space to have all of that, so I had to be really selective of what I did. But what I did is go up there for hours and hours and hours, and I would just study stuff. I would like look at a backpack and learn how it was made, and I really fell in love with how things were made for the military, because it was stripped down to its very functional need
Right.
only, and then you're using materials that are going to only wear in, never wear out.
Yep.
And then you're just like, yeah, it just embodies this like durability and this like functionality that was beautiful.
And so those first canvas and stuff, it was from tents?
Yeah, so
Or-
this material that we're sitting on is called a half shelter or a shelter half,
Mhm.
and it was used for two soldiers to travel together. And then when they'd set up tent or camp, these snaps would link together, and then they'd make their tent, and two guys would sleep inside of it.
Mm.
So when you look at this, it's a big rectangle with two triangles on either end, and when you link them all together and you pop it up, the two triangles create one big triangle.
Now, it's surprisingly soft for like something
Yeah.
that would be like military tenting thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys treat that?
We
or-
launder it, yeah. So we'll wash it down with an enzyme and put a silicone on it, and just kind of like get it a little bit more home friendly.
So a process like that, like, I mean, it's not like they would teach you that process in the design school anyways,
Right.
but like, how do you go about learning that? You just like talk to...
Well, yeah. So when we were doing jeans before,
Ah.
it all came, and that's the connections I had to the laundries. Was going and experimenting with different washes to make jeans look like 20, 30, 40 years old. And so it was knowing all the terminology, knowing what all the different things in the laundry could do, and then just applying it to this to break down the material so you could get it soft.
And so you basically self-taught everything, right?
Well, I would say like rather than self-taught, it's more like learning by asking questions of people in the city, right?
Right.
Because like Los Angeles is like an unbelievably saturated city of manufacturing.
Right.
People know how to make things here. You just got to go knock on doors and like stick your head into warehouses.
Right. Yeah, I think like LA is sort of underrated in that thing, right? In that aspect. Because it's so sprawling means that real estate for light industrial still exists.
Yes.
Right? It's like really vertical cities, that light industrial component
Gets
starts
pushed out.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I used to live in downtown LA, in the One Santa Fe building, and I loved it. There would be like a really high-end coffee shop next to sort of a boutique, but next to like a welding shop, next to a pottery studio and things like that. But that is cool that you can kind of go around and source it. And that's kind of what you do in your headquarters. Like there's a powder coat place next door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a glass blower upstairs. Our welder, who does like 50% of our welding, is on the same floor 2 doors over. So we walk down the hallway and bring our frames around.
Really?
Yeah, it's really incredible, and it's not always going to stay that way as we kind of grow and have to need bigger spaces. But I'll still always be in love with connecting with people and feeling like we have this bigger team that's all subcontracted.
So, how did you go from like first sofa to where you're at now with all these subcontractors?
Yeah.
Did you build like the first one yourself, like a prototype, or?
I did do some of the sewing on the cushion covers, but in the very beginning, we knew that if we wanted to grow this, then we needed to have people in place to be able to make those. And I've always felt like I'd rather put my money into the idea and work with people so that as soon as we photograph it and we get an order, we say, all right, let's make more.
Right.
So that I don't get trapped in the place of doing it. Even though I love making stuff with my hands, I always want to be making the new thing with my hands and then working with people to make the second, third, fourth.
So how'd you, like, for the first one, you had a friend weld the frame, and you sort of sewed the cushions.
And I sewed the cushions, and then had, so after jeans, I got into making bags, and I went to my bag contractor. And it was a big investment, but the belt that we use on our furniture is modeled after a Swiss mule belt. It used to get wrapped around pack mules, and then they would tighten them and then attach bags onto the sides of these animals. And I loved the leather belt. It was just this incredible thing. So I took one apart and I took it to a die maker who makes basically this like wooden frame with a knife around it that you use heat, weight, and it cuts the belt all at once. And so it was a lot of money to make this die set, but it was essential to having each belt be exactly the same.
That's cool because, like, I have a lot of friends that are interior designers, and sometimes they go into like one of their houses or something, and it'll have like like an old draw knife hanging on the wall, right?
Yeah.
So people will see like or like an old saddlebag or an old milk can is like a really common one. So they're seeing like a previous industrial relic, and they love the aesthetic of it. So they incorporate it as a decorative device. I like that you actually you did that from an inspiration standpoint, but you actually incorporated it back into a functional piece of furniture. Is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and we used to take those exact same old belts. I found 200 of them back in that military warehouse, and we used them to make duffel bags. And then we sold through those duffel bags so fast, and I thought, I didn't get to keep one for myself, and I'm still so wishing I had kept one of the original belts.
So one of the things I think that makes your sofa completely different is that the most iconic angle is sort of from the back, which is totally unusual. Sofas are normally something that's so one-sided, right? Like it's supposed to, which is why people are often pushing them up like against the wall so often. That sort of belting detail really gives the part that's normally the afterthought of the sofa, like it's kind of part of its sort of really iconic kind of visual. Yeah, that's so cool. So that came from a pack
mule. Yeah, from the Swiss military. And the webbing we replicated at a factory here in California called California Webbing Mills. They're just down the block from us, and we brought them this thick piece of jute webbing with these 2 red stripes in it, and asked them to recreate it, and they laughed at us, saying like, "There's no way we can weave jute. Like this is ridiculous." But what they could do is do it in cotton, and we like dyed it to look at that kind of like old, aged, dirty kind of look. So I think it's also important to kind of like work within the limitations of what's possible now.
Right.
All the original belts on that same belt that we copied were all hand sewn. And there's just no way that would be possible now. But when you look at it, it's really beautiful.
So you don't want to get stuck on that thing of like where you can't. You want to sort of take the visual inspiration and keep moving, even if it has to be applied differently because of.
Yeah. Well, and also like I think making use of the technology we have now versus when it was then. But just the general form. Yeah.
So how much different are the sofas now than that first one that you made?
They've evolved quite a bit, and we've learned from putting them in public spaces and seeing the wear, and seeing how they wear out. One of the biggest things that we did is the belts used to go from the back all the way to the front and then wrap to the back and tighten. And so you'd actually be sitting on like a web of belts. But what we did is this is now a wooden frame that sits on a gusset, and it's screwed into the bottom, and we have elastic webbing inside here. So it has the same look, but you don't see the webbing.
Right, it still looks completely separated.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also really, really easy because these are all individual pieces that can pop in and kind of get screwed in. So just like the actual process of moving the stuff around the city, and if somebody rips this or spills on this one, you can replace this one. You don't have to replace all of them.
So aesthetically, from the overall sort of silhouette and dimensions and stuff like that, relatively similar.
Yeah,
but the detailing and how it all comes together is where a lot of evolution happened.
I would say, yeah. And then one of the most recent things we've just added is this leather strip underneath the back cushions that snaps here.
Oh yeah.
And that keeps the cushion from sliding in to where the belts meet the frame. And then there's a keeper on the back here to prevent it from moving around. So it was all those little things that used to drive me crazy when I would see a piece look messy. Yeah. And I was like, ugh.
Right, because it's a casual aesthetic with the canvas, and the cushions have a nice curvature to them. Yeah. But like once one of them starts shifting over, you start seeing through the frame.
And maybe it would only bother me, but you know.
Yeah. So, what are you like currently most excited about? Like, what are the sort of without giving away any proprietary secrets of what's next? Like, where are you getting like your visual inspiration from now? Like, what's a couple of things that maybe people would say like, I wouldn't have think that Steve and Kenn would be into that. So you're really into motorcycles, I hear.
Really into motorcycles. We're working on a fun project downtown where we're going to create a showroom that has an overnight stay component where people can stay, and we'll host events.
Really, like an Airbnb kind of thing?
It will be, yeah.
That's awesome.
But it'll all be products that either we make or we're friends with the people. And so it'll
Gotcha.
serve as like a showroom, and also like kind of a gallery for us to like talk about the brands and the people who we're excited about.
Right.
And that'll kind of evolve and change. And that'll really, I'm excited about the hospitality component because
Yes.
we've really enjoyed serving coffee to people and serving cocktails to people over the course of the last 6 years. And so that'll be a way for us to do way more focused, intentional time on like giving people a really unique experience in Los Angeles.
Go more immersive.
Especially downtown, because I feel like downtown's changing so much.
I imagine that would also be like a very desirable thing for like people that are doing like photo shoots or stuff like that.
Totally, yeah, we'll make it available for that.
It's interesting. Like I've put my loft in Boston on Airbnb, and I put it kind of like I don't always want people in there, but I put it sort of like probably at pricing in a ways, so it's really only for people that want to do like photo shoots. But I'm surprised at like the number of startups that sort of book it for doing like product launches and stuff like that, because sort of a cool domestic environment. Most of the people that own those don't want anyone else in them. So there is kind of a cool utility for that. So like recently, there was a company that's making these sort of like robotic gardens, like where you like put in the little herb pods and then like it's almost like a chia pet, but from the future. Yeah. And so all your like vegetables and stuff can grow in these little machines. They would come and like shoot stuff there. So no, that's a great idea. And you do. I saw on your website that you do like these different collaborations and kind of events and stuff.
Yep. We've collaborated with a couple different brands, but in terms of like the events, we always like to connect with different people in whatever capacity. So we've worked with different people, coffee companies to come and serve coffee to people, or different like an Amaro brand came and did a cocktail night, or different bartenders in the city. I think collaboration, by nature, I think it's become a very like overused maybe word.
Yeah.
But I am just a very collaborative person because I love the idea of an idea growing and becoming something different than it was in the beginning. Because I think if we're too safe with ideas, they stay too small.
Right.
They can kind of grow and become bigger if you let people into them.
So you're suggesting the revolutionary idea that collaboration should be more than just an Instagram picture together?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I feel like somebody even said like we should collaborate over lunch sometime, and I'm like we should just have lunch sometime. Like, why do we have to collaborate?
Yeah,
over lunch, or like whatever that he was trying to get at.
Yeah, collaboration involves like probably some sort of iterative back and forth or involvement, not just
you ordered and I ordered. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, back to your kind of question, in terms of things I'm actually excited about is we have an outdoor furniture collection coming out, and it's been a long process because when we first started with these pieces, immediately people said, are they good for outdoor? And they were designed for indoor, and we've made them with some Umbrella material, powder-coated frames, dry-fast foam, nylon webbing, and we've made them so that they can function for outdoors. But then we really took the thought of, let's learn everything that we've learned about what needs to go into an outdoor piece and design something like specifically for that. So that's coming out in May at ICF.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, exciting. Yeah, outdoor is hard. Like, I mean, in my background in architecture, I'd always talk to clients and like, oh, why can't we just use these materials for the cladding, right? They'd be like, and I always feel like I was sort of the Grinch, so telling them, no, you can't really clad your house in that because UV damage alone is so brutal over time. That'll be. Yeah,
there's a lot of things that you don't know going into it.
Right.
Like you want to start like aesthetically, oh, this will just be beautiful, but the sun will just rip things apart, right? And like weather. And especially, California, we think we do deal with the sun, but like I'm not thinking as much for like snow and heavy rains and things like that. Yeah. But we had to consider all of that and say, what's the type of stuff that we can just leave out there?
Because we've all seen that kind of like patio furniture that's either kind of weirdly discolored over time, either where like the sun bleaches it and then like these like weird little mildew condensation things come in. Yeah. It's an interesting technical challenge, but it seems to be like obviously it's a pretty awesome sort of business opportunity because I've seen from a content standpoint that some of our videos that do the best are outdoor furniture.
Totally.
Simply because there's so fewer options, particularly modern options for outdoor furniture. Also, it's like the price expectation for outdoor stuff is way higher because that's a technical component. So
Well, I think people think it should be cheaper because it's outside,
Right.
but actually it's more expensive to make generally
Way
because
more.
the materials are like a stainless over
Yep.
like a steel or like an aluminum, and like it's just I think people don't really know what goes into making things weather resistant and weather durable.
So you also do like a line of bags and stuff like that.
Yes.
And it's interesting. I don't know. It's not like unheard of that, like, you know, someone who does a lot of furniture design, but also designs sort of like almost garments or in between. Is that like a strategic thing, or you just like had an idea for it, or?
So after doing the jean companies, I did 2 jean companies before, and then started a bag company, and I jumped into making furniture, but really felt like I wasn't quite finished with the bags, and wanted. I had always made bags out of that military canvas, and I always wanted to make one out of all leather, solely for this idea of I wanted something to never wear out, but only always keep being in the process of wearing in. Like it's getting better and better
Right.
and better. And that idea of passing an object on from one generation to the next was such a romantic idea for
Right.
me. So when we first started the furniture company, our friends had a film company called Process Creative, and they shot this really beautiful documentary film about us making the first sofa. And I told them I have this narrative idea about a boy finding a letter inside a trunk, and then as he reads this letter, it informs him about everything his dad wished he could have told him before he passed away, but he'd never know his dad. And they were like, we have to make that film. And so it was kind of like, in some ways, creating the bag collection to tell the story. And we did that, and it turned out to be really good. And now the leather maker that we make our bags with, I just love what he does. And I see it as kind of like becoming a more rare thing that somebody's going to dedicate themselves to this craft. And he really looks at himself like an artisan. And so for me, I really want to keep up that relationship. And then we recently launched a new bag collection using all the scraps of this material that we've been saving for about 5 years. Because I can't part with the little pieces on the floor. So we kind of scoop them all up and we keep them all, and asked all of our upholstery contractors not to throw this material away. And then we cut them into these little 4x4 squares.
Yeah, it's
sewed them
that
together.
awesome kind of like patchwork.
Exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah, so that was a very recycled project. And in fact, the zipper, the hardware, the material outside, even down to the leather, is all recycled material.
So you're one of the few designers I know that has a good success case of that kind of hoarding mentality.
Yeah,
I know
it's hard, right?
Because like space is so limited, right? Like I always struggle with that in like my workshop, because my impulse is to say,
this is so good.
I could totally make something out of that, and then it like stacks up.
I probably never would have done anything with it if everybody in the studio said, all right, you have now a deadline. You have to put this out before Christmas. And so we started last summer and launched it for holiday this year. But I'm glad we did it. It was a good project.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for doing this interview.
Sure.
And yeah, super happy to finally meet you in person. And I think the audience is really going to enjoy hearing your story, especially because it's always funny to me, because we get a lot of questions from people that like, oh, I want to get into design, but I don't have this sort of like formal background. And as someone now that dabbles in sort of furniture design, but coming from a different design background, it's super inspiring to hear someone that didn't come from that.
Yeah.
That came from garments and denim. So very, very cool.
Yeah, and I would say to anybody who is kind of thinking about going down that path, like it's absolutely possible. I think focus is incredibly important, and I think don't look to what somebody else is doing and try and imitate them or replicate what they're doing, but really like know that you have a unique perspective that kind of needs to be shared with the world. So
yeah,
stay focused and do it.
And if you're hearing some noise and stuff, that's because Dude the dog joined us in this interview, for those listening on the podcast. But mostly a welcome addition, and probably the most behaved I've seen him in a while.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man.
Be sure to check out some of our other videos, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks. Bye.